Welcome to the Leadership Brothers Podcast, Episode 3. I am Gibson Piper.
And I'm Brock Piper.
We are finishing up Extreme Ownership. If you haven't checked out the first 2 episodes, they are linked below in the description. So we'll start with Chapter 9, Plan. So for me, these last 4 chapters, right?
Yeah, I think there's 3 parts, 4 chapters each section.
Yeah.
So
these really stood out to me as far as coaching is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
These are like the more applicable ones to coaching.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So, like when he talks about plan, my first thing on page 198 was his final remarks to the team before they left on their mission.
Yeah.
He said he wanted to be basically find a way to prioritize that information and have the last 3 most important things he wanted them to hear before they left.
Yeah.
And to me, that I thought of pregame speeches immediately.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
How many times were you in a pregame speech or a pregame meeting with your coaches, right, that you're going ready to play, and it was information overload? They told you too many things.
I don't think very often for me.
Well, you were in a good program.
Okay.
I've been around, and I've done it initially where you try to give them everything that you know, right? And then as before the game, it's more of like a rah, like, go get 'em
exactly.
speech, where I personally think it should be. These are the top 3 things we need to go out and execute today.
Yeah.
Here they are, simple, clear, concise. Let's go.
Go do it.
And the motivation can be a part of that. But I think as coaches, we tend to. I think the pregame speeches are for the coaches more than the players.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't disagree, but a lot of times, like when I was getting ready for football games, and like coach would say something really like I feel like I would get I don't know, I wouldn't get more motivated to go win. I would get more maybe like amped up and excited to get out there and play, because my motivation was always the same every single game, was go out there and make plays and win. So I think the coach, I don't know, I don't think my motivation was up like you're saying, but I think like it heightened it like the way the way my high school coach did it. He did it like in the mornings, on Friday mornings. He would be like, all right guys, like we're cooking the pot's on 1 right now, we're gonna put the stove on, put the burner on 1, and then we'll see him in like 4th period. He's like, hey guys, turn it up to 5, So he like through the whole day, he just got us so ready, and like our mindset was so focused the whole day. So that the way he did that was just like really cool, because then like his like at the end of the speech, he's like, hey, we're all the way dialed up to 10 now. Like the pot's boiling, the top's popping off, stuff like that. So I think it wasn't like the motivation wasn't like heightened or anything. It was just more like the focus and like he like elevated our mindsets, I guess.
Yeah, I just think. I think at times, though, like the whole rah, go get 'em speeches that you see are just fluff for coaches to do.
True.
Because it doesn't really, I mean, like, would you have been motivated any differently to go out and play if he said a different speech?
No, I don't think I don't think the motivation would have changed. I think maybe like the like the camaraderie of like, oh hey, did you hear what coach? You heard what coach said. Like, oh, now we're like super hyped. It's like a team thing. Yeah, it's not like an individual thing. It's like, oh, team wise, let's get motivated. I don't know. I kind of see what you're saying, but I think depending on the coach, if you get good speeches, it might like raise your. I
also think football is different.
That's very true. I
think football by nature is a heightened, elevated, emotional experience. And also, how many games do you play in a season?
Yeah, you I mean, NFL, you get 16 games during the regular season, so it's like every single game counts.
What about high school?
High school, you get
12,
10. Yeah. I think we had 10, maybe 11, and then you go into the playoffs or whatever. So you might,
Yeah, basketball we have like 30.
That's not exactly. So like
twice a week. I mean, it's just so constant. It falls on deaf ears at a certain point.
Yeah, that's very true, because we had once a week we get a speech. Basketball, you guys can probably 2-3 times maybe you got three games in a week. You get that. Players could be like, well, okay, well, coach. Like by the end of the year, if the coach is saying the same motivation, you could be like, hey, coach, okay, we know what you're gonna say. What I'm saying? Like the same points are gonna be the same thing. So I could see how the differences between football and basketball could be there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so. My next point I had was on coaching and practice planning on page 203. He talks about mission planning. He says that's what mission planning was all about. Never taking anything for granted, preparing for likely contingencies, and maximizing the chance of mission success while minimizing the risk to the troops executing the operation.
Yeah.
I think, to me, this is what coaching and practice planning is about.
Mm-hmm.
Defining the mission, right? Defining your mission, and never taking anything for granted. Preparing for every contingency plan, and maximizing the chance of success while minimizing the chance of failure.
Yeah, I think that's very good. Well said by, not you, by.
I mean, said by me right now, but
spoken by you at the current moment. But yeah.
And so, so when I was thinking about that, I was like, okay, how many times in my practice plan or like in my preparation was I not prepared for something?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really that I wasn't prepared for it. It was more of I had to prioritize a certain thing. So like, you can't do everything in practice, right? Like you're only going to be good at one thing.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it comes down to. And obviously you can get better at everything, but you can only be great at one thing. So like your press offense and your press defense might slip because you don't practice those every day.
Yeah.
So if someone threw a trap on us or threw a press on us, we weren't as prepared because you can't focus on everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then my thought was, why not?
Yeah.
Like why didn't I include, like maybe I include start every drill from, the halfway on to include a press or a trap in the beginning of it. And then we flow into half court.
Mm-hmm.
Like why couldn't I? So I did a lot of self-reflection this week of just kind of like what I could have done better, throughout the last 3 years as a coach, and just some of the excuses I made because I was like, we can't do everything, which is true.
Well, yeah.
But you can at least prepare for them and be prepared for it in a game versus being great at, just that one thing.
Yeah, especially because you can game plan. So, like, hey, team one, they're more of a press team. Hey, this whole week we're going to focus, then you can throw that in. But then next week, oh, hey, they just sit back in a zone defense. We don't have to practice as hard that week on that. I think that's a big thing for football, too, because literally you have 1 week to plan for a team. So, like, every single week changes your thing. So, yeah, obviously you can't do everything. You can't plan for everything. You can't execute everything properly like that. But it's like, okay, well, we know this team runs this kind of offense. This whole week we're going to change our defensive scheme a little bit, so it's like, I understand. Yeah. So it's like knowing that you can't do everything, but prioritizing what you can do to, like, maximize your mission would be, yeah. Yeah,
for sure. The next thing that I had was basically clear thoughts, clarify your mission. So when he talks about the principle of plan, he says on page 204, a broad and ambiguous mission results in a lack of focus, ineffective execution, and mission creep. To prevent this, the mission must carefully be refined and simplified so that it is explicitly clear and specifically focused to achieve the greater strategic vision for which that mission is a part. The mission must explain the overall purpose and desired result or end state of the operation. That to me was extremely good because often I have a plan for myself and what I want to accomplish that day, but I would never make it clear with anybody else. Not on purpose. Like I wasn't trying to deceive anybody or surprise anybody. It was just more about I thought I might overload them if they don't know what I'm expecting all the time. Like you can throw so much information at everybody that it could be information overload.
Oh, for sure.
So that led me to thinking, okay, in the newer practice plans and things that I want to do, I want to always talk about my intent, like why we're doing this, and give them one or two key points of how this applies to a game or their basketball skills. So that was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The next on page 205 talks a little bit about detachment, and in the mission planning phase, he says, when he's talking about getting bogged down in the details.
Yeah.
Right, where he says maintain a perspective of everything, and you can kind of stand back and be the tactical genius Thought that was great.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, tactical genius was a good. I like that saying.
To identify the weaknesses and the plan, and then fix them. And I think that that maybe is more of a head coach's philosophy and thing.
Yeah.
I think as a assistant coach, which I am, and you're gonna be, I think you can get bogged down in the details more. I think you're allowed to, because like for me specifically, if it's just for offense, I can be bogged down in those details and not worry about what our defense is doing all the time.
Yeah.
Because that's my responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right? So if that's my responsibility, it allows me to focus a little more, while the head coach is kind of detached and looking at the whole picture.
Because he knows and he trusts you to run that one aspect, so he can be, and then he can oversee both things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's big on a football team too, because there's I actually didn't realize that there's so many coaches that go in. You got the running backs coach, and there's like every position has a coach, and then you have the coordinators, and you have that, and you have special teams. There's just so much that goes into it that, like me being on the defensive side, I don't even have to worry about what the offense is doing at all. So I can kind of, detail and be like, okay, linebackers, this is how you read a run, this is how you read a pass, and all these different things, instead of focusing on so many different things. And then, the head coach knows that, and I'm on the linebackers, trusts me to do it, and then we take care of that. But then he can have the tactical overview of like, okay, is Brock doing a good job on offense, and defense, and then we can look at offense and those different things. So I think it's big for football.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's probably more prevalent in football than basketball.
Yeah, because there's not college basketball. There's more coaches just because it's a higher level, and there's more things that go into it than high school. Because high school, how many coaches do we got? What, 3, 4?
3 usually. Is
I was gonna
sometimes 4. It depends on the school. But even then, let's say you have 4 coaches. Well, your point guard and shooting guard, they both play offense and defense.
Exactly.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to specifically detail. Like for football, you have very specific positions. You have very very purpose driven positions, as in you can play in high school. Usually you play both ways, like we kind of talked about.
For sure.
But like in college especially, it's like you're the defensive backs coach.
Yeah.
Don't even just focus on defensive backs.
On that. That's all they do. That's all they play. That's the one position they play. They can't do anything else.
In college, you could be in charge of the point guard, but you're probably in charge of other things too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the point guard plays offense and defense, so you're probably in charge of the offense.
And it's such a fast pace. Exactly. There's breaks.
The conversion is the hardest part in basketball. Is converting from offense to defense, defense to offense.
Yeah.
Which is why I always say win the 3, which is basically if you can win the first 3 seconds of converting from offense to defense or defense to offense, those first 3 seconds when we get the ball or when we don't have the ball, if we can retreat back faster than them and beat them at the court faster than them, just in those little 3 seconds is super important.
For sure.
So I like the quote on 206, those who will not risk cannot win.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That was sweet. Because it's like, that is true.
Yeah.
It's
clear and
self-explanatory.
It's
self-explanatory, but it's great. And then where they started talking about a post-operational debrief. This was extremely important for me because I feel like I do a good job of being self-aware and reflecting on what went right, what went wrong. But I haven't really had a process of even at the end of each night.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, what went wrong, what went right, how do I get better from today to tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I don't think you have to write it down. I'm going to, because I for me, when I was reading it, I was like, I don't really do a good job of making it known of what I'm doing. Like I know what I'm doing wrong and I know what I'm doing right, but I don't actually praise myself for doing those right things. And I don't actually fix or correct what I'm doing wrong.
It's just like there. Like, okay, I know that's good. I know that's bad.
Like I know, I should be doing more from a physical perspective, from an eating perspective. I should be doing better.
Yeah.
But I'm not actually taking action and writing down a logical plan and steps to do that better the next day. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. It's almost like when you're doing something wrong, and then somebody who you respect tells you you're doing something wrong, and that makes you change. Yeah. You know what I mean? The outside voice comes in, and it just gives you you're like, yeah, I know. You knew the whole time. You didn't need them to tell you. But once they tell you or they kind of talk to you about it, you're like, yeah, okay, I'll change it. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's kind of like that. So for me, one of the things that I'm going to do a better job of doing is having my own personal post-op debrief where I basically go through. I'm probably going to create a document or something that I have so it's easy for me to just like, takes 2 minutes, like just real quick, what went right, what went wrong, here are my adjustments, here's how I get after it, And so what I'm going to do is for me at the end of each night, I'm going to do that, but also after like practices and games.
Yeah.
Because then that way it's a learning tool for me, and maybe I'll even have it saved on my computer and then go through each one and say, like, okay, here are the lessons I learned this week. Here's the most important one I took away.
Mm-hmm. That's
like
true.
That.
And then you can like look back on it and then you keep a log of it. I think that's good.
Yeah. Just for my own personal, growth and leadership. Mm-hmm. So he talks a lot about the leader checklist.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
I'm not going to write or read all of them.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Because it's a very good checklist and you should buy the book. So the most important ones for me anyways was analyze the mission.
Yep.
Which is basically understand everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Determine a specific course of action.
Yeah.
Empower key leaders to develop the plan. And then conduct brief the plan to all participants and supporting assets, emphasizing the commander's intent, which I really like, right? Like if you're looking at a head coach or assistant coach to head coach, that's the commander's intent. What does the head coach want done? Mm-hmm. How can you get that to your team, right? And then conduct a post-op operational debrief after execution. Mm-hmm. So you kind of go back over and look at the lessons you learned. Those are like the main ones for me. Did you have any other in that list?
I had all those down. I actually liked the one that was continually to check the plan when new information comes about. I think that's big in football because it's like you have a game plan for this one player. Their stud running back, beast. We got to stop him. Oh no, he sprained his ankle. He's not in anymore. Now we got to change the game plan because then they might try to go pass the ball more. So it's like different things. Like that's new information you got, and then if you didn't plan for that, you got to check the plan. Like, oh, that doesn't work anymore. We got to change the plan. So yeah. I personally liked that one the most.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Not the most, but like
it stood out to you.
It stood out to me out of the other ones that you didn't mention.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Then I just wrote down or I highlighted establishing an effective and repeatable planning process is critical to the success of any team. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Kids come into the film room, they know exactly what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I took from that. So when he talks about on page 213, he talks about the planning process, and he wasn't trying to impress the senior leaders with the planning process. Yeah. I think actually Jocko said to Leif, "Hey, don't worry about the upper management. Basically, I'll take the hit if they say anything. Plan this debrief and this mission clear as you possibly can, so that way the team who's going to do it knows exactly what they're doing." Mm-hmm. Which I think is super important, because he says the true test for a good brief is not whether the senior officers are impressed. It's whether or not the troops that are going to execute the operation actually understand it. Everything else is BS.
Yeah. Which, that makes sense. At the same time, like, I feel like people can get wrapped up in like making a plan and making sure that like their boss is like, oh hey, I see you making that plan. It's a great plan. But then it's like the people you're gonna implement the plan to are like, I don't understand. I don't get it. This doesn't work for me. So I think that's really big, and that can help a lot of people out.
I've been around a lot of coaches early in my life, and a lot of them have been younger, right? Similar to my age, and just we're all kind of growing up at that age together, and we're all assistants and younger. Like, hey, you had coaches, and most of the time, when somebody else has more experience than you, you try to impress them with your knowledge or like just showing off or like looking what you can do, which doesn't help anybody. Yeah. And it's like it doesn't do any purpose besides your ego, right? That's all it is. And we talk about dropping your ego.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's like for me, It does, like when you're smart, I'm considered a smarter basketball coach, right? I mean, just because I study film so much. Yeah. So when you talk to people, and they know that you do more than them, they try to kind of play up what they know.
Yeah, and I think that's a natural, like a natural thing to do. You know, like I've done it, you've done it probably. It's just it's hard. It's hard. This is like, especially when you're not like. I mean, if you're semi-prepared to go into a conversation, then they start talking to this person about something you like are passionate about or think you're good at, and then like you realize like, oh no, like, it's like, hey, this guy, oh wow, this guy knows more than I do. Hold up, let me change my stance. Talk myself up, so then he thinks that I'm like an equal, or you know, or something. So basically, your ego and your pride are getting in the way instead of just saying, hey man, that's awesome. You know, stuff like that. So yeah,
and it's really hard. Oh yeah, because I think we all seek validation in one way or another. You know, so it's like, when you're seeking that validation from anybody, you know, it doesn't matter. Like if I'm meeting, you know, some of the new parents of the players who don't know me, right? Like everybody else at previous school knew me. A lot of people know me overall. Tilden knows me. Like a lot of people know me, but they don't know what I've done and my experience and how hard I work.
Yeah, like your credentials essentially.
Right. So you're like, you want to almost like force that in. Like subtly be like, yeah, I've done this too. Like I've done a really good job at this. You know, like you try to, you know, validate yourself. And I think it's a natural thing that people go through. And I think a big part of that is if you just lose your ego, it won't matter.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know? Yeah, you just said the most important part of the brief is to explain your commander's intent. And I think that for me, this is one of the biggest ones I took away, because when I'm going to be working at my new job this year, new coaching gig, I'm going to make sure that nobody cares what I think or say. I want to make sure that the only thing that's important is what the head coach, what his intent is, no matter what.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if I'm funny. Doesn't matter if I'm you know, good at it. It doesn't matter if it's the best thing I've ever done. As if it's not showing off what his intent is, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that was important for me.
Yeah, I think it's a key thing to remember.
Yeah. All right, that's all I had for chapter 10 or 9. Do you have anything else on chapter 9? Plan?
I could be wrong. This is like this is not a question, it's probably my thought, and you can kind of respond to it and see if it's like a correct way of thinking. I thought maybe like the more detailed the plan is, the better. And I don't mean to like over complicate it so it's not simple, because then I also wrote next to it, you know, when you say your plan, make it simple so they can understand it. But I was thinking more like a football aspect. You know, you don't want to have, if you're an offensive coordinator, you don't want to have just 10 plays. You know, you want to have 50 plays. But so your plan is to have 50 plays, but make sure your players know your bread and butter, and you know they know what to go to. But you should have a variety of options to go to if you need like not a trick play, but you need a play that like the defense is just killing you. Like their team is just like they're anticipating every move. I feel like you need to be able to have the plan to go out to move outside of what you were originally going to do, but make sure your players are like fully understand. You know, is what I'm saying kind of making sense to you, or are you tracking with what I'm saying, and is it making sense at all, or
a little bit?
Okay.
I think the biggest thing for the plan is what is the overall mission?
True. Okay. Yeah.
Which is to win the game, right? Or it could be win the next possession, right? Like for me for basketball, I try to just simplify it and say like if we could just win the quarter.
Yeah.
Right. Win the possession. You know, like from timeout to timeout. If we win that portion of the game, because if you're down 20, you're not going to win the game.
Yeah.
So they could easily give up on the mission. But if you're just trying to win the last, like let's say the timeout's called with 4 minutes left in the game, you're down 20. You can still go to your team and say, hey, we're just trying to win this little portion of the game, right? So football, you win the possession.
It's like a building block.
You're just because it could springboard you to the next game.
Exactly.
You know, and you're just trying to get those little wins, and eventually, if you get those little wins enough, they lead to the big win.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So it just depends on what your overall mission is, and like with so that way it's the strategy comes down to here's what the other team is doing on defense.
Yeah.
Here's how we counter it on offense. And I maybe wouldn't include a ton of plays in that scheme.
True.
Obviously, I don't know how football works. Football is a little more play call based, right? Because you can have a little more structure with the formations and the different counters out of those formations. I mean, I'm guessing one formation could have 40 to 50 plays in that formation, right? Basketball, I mean, you can, but it's really difficult because it's up and down, right? It's constant movement. You're flowing in and out. So really, if you play in concepts in basketball, it's a little better. So when we talk about just the coaching aspect of it, talking about their overall scheme, defensive and offensive, what they're trying to do, how they're trying to beat us, and how do we prepare for that. Yeah. To me, that's the biggest part of the mission planning.
True. Okay.
And then you can go throughout the week and go specifics, right? You can go specifically offense, specifically defense. Here's what we do in this situation with the walkthrough, whatever you want to get the detailed is. The detail part for me is more for the coaching staff than it is the players.
True. Okay.
Now, because think about it. If you threw anything, any sort of detailed scouting report at Braxton, it wouldn't matter.
No.
He would understand it.
Yeah.
But there's probably 20 guys that wouldn't. Right?
Yeah.
So what's the overall goal? To get one person to really like it and understand every detail, or get the whole team to understand the mission and the goal?
Very true. Yeah.
Right? So that's how you kind of
team.
Yeah, you obviously.
Yeah.
If it is your mission to get one person to understand it, you have the wrong mission, right?
Yeah. Mission needs to be
not the right mission.
reevaluated.
Unless you're coaching tennis, like it doesn't. It doesn't matter.
Wrestling.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you get the whole team to understand the mission and what the commander's intent are as the assistant? As the head coach, here's your intent. Here's what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Here's how we do it. Makes sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think, my mindset should more focus on like that checklist than just like, how detailed the plan is. More follow the checklist.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 10. Now, you said this was the most confusing for you.
Yeah. I don't know the word. Yeah. I mean, confusing be a good word. I was just reading it and I was kind of like, I guess the confusing part was, or the part that I had the hardest time like grasping was the leading up. Like leading up. I get leading down because it makes sense, head coach, coordinators, position coaches for football. It's like a chain. Boom, boom, boom. That's easy, but it's hard to think like, okay, if I'm way down here and the coach is way up here, how am I gonna lead back? You know what I'm saying? It's like I read it and I was kind of grasping it, but like, how can I lead back up to the coach? How can I lead the head coach when I'm like this bottom assistant guy? So I had a hard time grasping that, or how to like apply that and actually do it when a time comes about. So that's kind of what I think.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, let's unpack it first. So basically, leading up and down the chain of command, it kind of started with Leif kind of feeling down, not really feeling like they had a huge impact in Iraq. And when Jocko made his debrief and kind of talked about the overall missions and everything that they accomplished, and Leif was able to realize when you take a step back as a leader, you see everything unfold and everything you accomplish.
Yeah.
And so he talks about how his SEAL teams didn't understand that context because he hadn't taught them that context. As in, a SEAL in the field walks into the room and says, "What's next? What's the next mission?" Not understanding the full context and ramifications of everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, the leading down the chain of command is pretty self-explanatory, like you said.
Yes.
Right? So on page 230, he says, as a leader employing extreme ownership, if your team isn't doing what you need them to do, you first have to look at yourself. Rather than blame them for not seeing the strategic picture, you must figure out a way to better communicate it to them in terms that are simple, clear, and concise so that they understand. This is what leading down of the chain of command is all about. Right?
Yeah.
Simple. You're in charge. The people below you, they have to understand exactly what the mission is and how to execute it in simple, clear, concise terms. Otherwise, you're not a good leader.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now leading up. Okay. So basically, how this was introduced was some of the superiors were sending an email to Jocko and Leif, and they said, "Did you have a QRF, a quick reaction force?"
Yeah.
Right. Which is probably the most standard thing they had on all their operations and procedures.
Yeah, since it was, I remember it's so deadly. You have to have, otherwise it's almost a suicide mission.
Yeah, it's basically when things are going sideways, this team comes in and helps kind of rescue and is able to respond whenever needed, right? And so Leif was kind of airing his frustrations, and Jocko was obviously frustrated. But the biggest thing, so he said on 233, the frustrations we had with our superiors were misguided. The CEO and his staff weren't bad guys out to make our lives harder and stifle our operations. They were good people trying to do their jobs the best they could do to give us what we need to accomplish the mission. So, basically, what was happening is the supervisors and the people above them didn't understand or didn't have these key points.
Mm-hmm.
So they were asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
So they were asking questions that were obvious to Leif and Jocko,
Mm-hmm.
but Leif and Jocko had not appropriately communicated what exactly the plan and the details were on each mission. So by not doing that, that forced the leaders to ask those questions
Okay.
down the chain of command,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're asking those questions because they need to tell their superiors, yes, we checked these boxes so they can go on this mission.
Mm-hmm.
But by not leading up the chain of command and communicating clearly with their bosses, they were basically left alone, so their bosses couldn't do their job fully.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna have let's use coaching, right? You're gonna be, let's say, a volunteer coach this year.
Yeah.
In charge of whatever,
Mm-hmm.
water, it doesn't matter, right? Let's say you're in charge of just making sure the film gets set up, the film gets edited and broken down, and you don't have to do it, but you're in charge of that process.
Okay.
Okay. If you have something that's going on with the film, and so let's say film day hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a mess up. Every game there's a mess up in the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
At the start of the third quarter.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. The head coach, 4 games in, is going, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't tell him, hey, coach, I'm just letting you know, beginning of the third quarter, this messes up because of X, Y, and Z. Here's a solution we're building to.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have that information, so he can't help you and understand what the problems are.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird example, but basically, you're not giving him all of the information. So when
Yeah.
he comes to you, even though it may be out of your control, you're still responsible for that portion.
Okay. No, yeah, that makes more sense now because it's kind of and I think I don't think Jocko and Leif were like intentionally not telling them things. You know, I don't think it was like
That's the point.
Yeah, they it's like they weren't like not they weren't like doing anything like deceitful. They weren't like lying and hiding and like secretly doing missions. They were so not wrapped up, but they were so focused on getting them the mission. You're saying like they were focused on getting their teams out and about that they forgot to really explain everything to the CEO, right? That was, I mean, signing off on the missions, right? Is that how I'm understanding
basically.
it? Or?
So so the reason that you lead up the chain of command is to make their job easier.
Okay.
That's essentially what it is.
Because
right?
someone unless it's like the top of the top guy, like Jocko's bosses are gonna report to their boss. Report to their boss.
Somebody's reporting to somebody.
Someone's reporting to somebody. So
always.
So that's why. Okay. Yeah.
So basically, what it leads to is if you aren't leading up the chain of command, your superior, like your head coach, can't make a quicker decision if he doesn't have all the information.
True. Yeah.
So if you're noticing something, or if whatever your role is, if you're not communicating with your head coach, then he cannot make a decision about anything because he doesn't have all the information. So here's a good kind of example of that. For me as an assistant coach, on the bench during a game, what I do is I'm just constantly talking to the head coach. And now it's not constant.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm seeing something, I'll say, hey, hey, our point guard's getting beat off the dribble, man. We got to get a sub real quick or go to zone.
Yeah.
Like just giving that flow of information. So that way throughout the game, the head coach, I see something differently. I do, right? Everybody sees something differently. Everybody in the world, me and you, see things differently. We could look at the same picture and see 2 different things.
Of course.
Right? That's how it works. Yeah. So when I'm on the bench and I'm going, hey, they're beating our press. Like, we got to get out of the press. Or like, hey, like, we should run horns. And just keeping that information going, that's leading up the chain of command. Because he now has more information.
Yeah.
He won't use 90% of it.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part of leading up. Is you give them all the information, they digest it, and either use it or don't. Right? So you have to be able to understand when they don't use the information, it's not personal.
Yeah.
It's all about the mission. Right? Lose your ego. It's all about the mission. If you can understand that at a younger age, it's the most important thing as a staff, as an assistant coach.
Yeah.
By far.
I think it's probably easier to do it. I haven't done it yet on the coaching staff. On a coaching staff, I think it's easier maybe to do it in a coaching setting because that's like something you want to do. But like like for me, I work at FedEx, and I have to drive. Sometimes I have to drive smaller trucks for my bigger route, and I have to do more truck swaps, and so it's harder to think like, okay, well, if I tell these guys, hey, I need a bigger truck, otherwise I'm gonna be worse on the mission of getting my packages, and then they're like, oh, we don't have any trucks to give you. It's gonna be hard to be like, okay, well, let's just take my ego and throw it out the way, and I got to deal with this smaller truck. It's hard to like think about it like that. You know what I'm saying?
It's harder in a corporation like FedEx.
Mm-hmm.
Because most retail environments or like businesses like that don't have a strategic plan. Like you don't know FedEx strategic mission overall plan.
Yeah.
I guarantee it.
No idea.
So it's really hard for you to lead up the chain of command. Is it impossible? No.
Yeah. No, I'm agreeing. Like,
yeah,
it's not
okay, it's not impossible.
Yeah, not
because you can ask questions, and all you are trying to do is lead up the chain of command to your first boss. Leading up chain of command isn't necessarily like going to the CEO, right? That's out of the scope. Right. But if you go to your immediate superior and you can say, hey, just so you know, this is what's happening on the front lines. Right. And then you can, but the biggest thing, and what I want to mention here is don't ask your leader what you should do. Tell them what you're going to do. Yeah.
I wrote that down because that's the one thing that really stuck out to me, especially when I'm doing something that's not coaching wise, like at my FedEx job, is a lot of times I'll go to my manager and be like, hey, what should I do with this? Like, I have this package, what should I do with it? You know what I'm saying? Instead of like, and it's like, it's not even, I probably know what to do with it. It's like, oh, I just need to copy it. Like, go copy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I always say should a lot. I feel like, even not in work, anybody, I'm like, hey, should I go cut the grass? No, just go cut the grass. You know what I'm saying? Why am I asking my father to go cut a grass? Like, just do it, and then like, hey, I cut the grass for you, or like I'm gonna go cut the grass,
or just do it and don't even tell me you did it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, just do it, and then he'll be like, who cut the grass? And he'll be like, oh, I don't know. Like, oh, I don't know who cut the grass.
You have to say that.
No, I know. Yeah. But I think that's the problem that I always fall in is like, hey, should I do this? Like, and it's just like, well, maybe he'll get mad if I cut the grass. Like, why would he get? It's just like no, why would he get mad about me doing something like a good deed for I don't know. So I think I have a problem with that I need to get better at saying, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, and then he can respond back like, no, hey, let's do it like this, instead of like, hey, what should I do? Because then whatever he says, I have to essentially do it because he's my manager. Instead of me saying, hey, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. So that's the one thing I got to keep in mind.
One of the lessons I learned early, it's back to coaching. One of the lessons I learned early was never go to your head coach with a problem without a solution.
Okay. That's good.
Because all you're doing is creating more problems.
And he already has enough problems.
He's got enough problems.
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't need you to be another problem. So that was one of my things. So whenever I would come into practice and we had a problem offensively, I knew I had 6 solutions already lined up.
Yeah.
There'd be times where I'd walk into practice, we'd walk into our pre-practice meeting as coaches, and he'd say, hey, I want to do this today, and I would already have had it planned out on my practice planner. Because I just knew, like, I need to be prepared for every situation possible as the assistant coach in charge of the offense. This is what's going wrong. This is how we're fixing it.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. And it's because I had to be able to say, okay, what am I doing wrong? How do I, what's the problem? How do I fix it?
Yeah.
So that way he can look really good as a coach.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters is what his expectations are, what his intent is, and can I make him look the best he can be? That's it. And so when he's talking about kind of like the field manager in the story, right?
Yeah.
He said there's 2 choices. You can throw your hands up in frustration and do nothing, or figure out how to most effectively operate within the constraints required of us. We chose the latter. Do you think your company, senior executives at corporate headquarters want you to fail? And that's a big thing that people don't realize.
Yeah.
They think their bosses are out to get them. I hear that a lot, and I see that a lot. And it's like, your bosses are there to make your job better. You're there to make their job better. They're supporting you because the better you do, the better they look.
Exactly.
So that was one of the things where it's like, I think in our heads, for me at least, as a young person, 5-6 years ago even, I thought all my bosses were out to get me and get me in trouble and like do this, and it's just completely misguided.
Yeah, I think that was when I read that, I was like, wow, that's big for me right now, because I work at a Fortune 500 company, and I'm like, man, I don't think these managers really, I just assumed a bunch of things, and I was like, when I read that, I was like, yeah, wait, why would I think that they don't want me to succeed? Like, it literally makes zero sense for me, at least, when I was like, well, why would I think they're gonna try to get me fired or something like that? I just started working here, and I'm doing a good job, I'm still learning how to be better and all that things. It's like, why would I think he wants me to not take the right truck? You know what I'm saying? Why would I think he wants me to take a smaller truck to slow me down? That might cause lates, that might get him in trouble. So it's and then I'll get frustrated, like, okay, well, he's making me take the small truck, like, that frustrates me. Why is he making me do that? He's not making me do anything. He doesn't want that. That's just something it just came about and happened, and we got to fix that together, instead of like, hey, let's just butt heads. Like, I'm mad at you. You're making me take this truck I don't want to take. So it's like learning that and hopefully applying that is two different things. But I've learned it, and I'm gonna try to apply it and see how that goes.
It's really hard to apply that. It just really is.
But yeah, I think the sooner you do it, or like the sooner you try to do it and get the experience with it, I think the faster things it will get better. I feel like, at least,
for sure. Do you have anything else on chapter 10? Do you understand that a little more clear now?
Yeah, no, I understand. Like, at first, I guess my mindset was a little bit different on how it was, but the way you explained it, kind of like it just like clicked. It's like, oh, yep, clicked, boom. Yeah. I understand it now.
Well, it's also one of the chapters that I studied the most, especially as an assistant coach. Mm-hmm. You're gonna use that. You're literally leading up and down the chain of command all the time. Head coach is a little different, but assistant coach for sure. All the time.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But yeah, I had nothing else on chapter 10. We wrapped it up pretty well.
Chapter 11, decisiveness and uncertainty. This is an extremely simple concept. I did not highlight a lot in this. I mean, it's pretty. For me, it was really hard because the last chapter is by far my favorite of any chapter really I've ever read. So like the chapter before it, I was like, oh, this just isn't as good.
Because you knew what was. I didn't know what was coming, so I thought it was no. I like the story. I did like the story of chapter 11 because it talked about Chris Kyle, American Sniper, and then
we'll talk about the story.
I'll talk about So quick synopsis of the story. So basically, Chris Kyle, American Sniper, he contacts Leif and was like, Leif, I got essentially a mystery guy in this window. I got my rifle on him. I got my scope on him. He's got a rifle himself. I see an outline. I can't do it. I can't. He said PID, so I can't positively identify the guy. So they don't know if he's a bad guy. They don't know if he's a good guy. So they start talking. Leif contacts another unit's chief, and they don't report to each other, so they can't give each other commands. And so the one chief is telling Leif to, hey, fire, like shoot this guy. We think he's an enemy sniper, and he might kill my guys. But Leif is saying, and stuck his ground, and said, hey, I can't do that. I don't know if this guy's a bad guy or not. I don't want to shoot and kill a U.S. soldier. Like that is something that I'm not going to do. But at the same time, he was like, well, man, if I don't shoot him and he kills a U.S. soldier, that, both things. So he was in a really, really bad spot. But they made the right decision. They did some more recon, more research, and then they ended up figuring out the building. There was a U.S. soldier in there, and they did not shoot him, which was fantastic. And they got out of that thing, and it was good. So it ended good, but then since Leif stuck his ground and they couldn't positively identify something, they didn't pull the trigger. And since they had so much experience, it was good because I think Chris Kyle was like, hey, I'm not. He was talking to Leif properly. Like if it was another sniper with less experience in the book, they said like he may have pulled the trigger. So it was good that the way they communicate and everything like that. That's kind of what happened.
Yeah. And so after all that, I highlighted. In combat as in life, the outcome is never certain, the picture is never clear. There is no guarantee of success, but in order to succeed, leaders must be comfortable under pressure and act on logic, not emotion. This is a critical component to victory.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I wrote that. Yeah, I wrote that down as well. I thought that was one of the a key thing that I saw in this chapter.
Yeah, and the story about the two employees that weren't very good. The basic of it is they fired them because they sucked.
Yeah, it was like, well,
they were toxic.
They're both really good at what they do, but they both are not working together and they're toxic. And then they're like, oh, let's just fire both of them, And they did. 2 people came up, and I think it worked. I don't know. They didn't really specify if it worked out completely, but the new leaders were ready to rock and roll. So
Yeah, I think at the end they did say it worked out.
It's like the new leaders. It was game on for them, So it was, and they were excited and they knew the mission. So yeah, and I wrote I just wrote down with with firing 2 employees or whatever. I wrote down like the leaders need to be like not comfortable, but being willing to make those tough decisions of like, hey, these 2 guys are making us money, but they're not working out. Boom, gone. Like firing them. That's not easy to do. To fire 2 people on like the leaders of 2 teams in your organization, it's not an easy thing to do. It'd be essentially like a football coach firing both of his coordinators and trying to find new ones. So that's not an easy thing to do. But I think as a leader, you got to be able to like rationally make like the logical decision to do that or not.
I think it's easy depending on how much you want to win.
That's true, actually.
Yeah. For me, it'd be easy. Get out. Like if you're not positively contributing to a good culture and environment, I don't need you. That's honestly for my life. That's what I've been doing. It's like, I mean, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I kind of like made the decision. I was like, okay, all of this stuff that I'm doing, all these people are not adding any value to my life.
Yeah.
I'd rather be alone, right, than be around those kind of people.
Yeah, because I think what was I don't know the saying, like the 5 closest people to you are who you are essentially, or like that.
I don't know about all that, but
I don't think like it's a legit thing.
I just don't know.
But I personally no, it's more of like I like the saying because it's like you said, like if like say you're around like 2 really really good people and you're around 2 really really bad people. You know what I'm saying? Like it's hard if you're around 5 good people. You ain't gonna be bad. How you gonna be bad with 5 good people? If you're around bad people, you're gonna be bad.
You can still be bad.
We can still be bad. But I'm talking about like if you have like strict. If you have like if you're an okay person. I don't know.
I just think we as a society love those catchy phrases and sayings. I think we gravitate towards those cliche kind of like culture quick hitters is what I call them, where they're like it's I'm just trying to think how to phrase it. Basically, it's a cool thing to say.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, like, yeah, you can, if you're around people who aren't good people, I think, yeah, that can add a little bit of negative value to you. But also at the same time, like, you make your own decisions.
Very true, but I think people influence your decisions.
So, maybe.
It depends how strong you are as a human being. But I'm just saying, if you should know if you're a strong enough human being to be around people who are going to be toxic and not good for you.
I mean, I've been around people that smoke weed all the time, and I've never smoked weed.
Yeah.
Like, I just think once you establish who you are, and that's why I think like the parents are. That's a different story.
Yeah.
But like, I could hang around a group of bad people for a year, and I don't think I would go up and be a bad person. I think you can change. And you can stay who you are in multiple environments. Yeah. To a certain extent. Obviously, if you hung around, if you grew up in an environment where you are around, like, let's say, like a lot of bad things happening, then, like, yeah, I mean, I could see that for sure.
Because you're growing up and that being normal,
Yeah, that's what you know. But, like, if all of a sudden in college you hang out with people who are doing really bad things, like, sure, you could get caught up in that, but I think it's based on personality.
I agree with that.
I don't know. I just think it's a nice little phrase people say. Like, people say a lot of those phrases, like, on social media, get a lot of retweets and likes, and like all the coaches are like, players, pay attention to this. And it's like, your players aren't even on Twitter, man. Like, they're on Instagram. Like, and they're not liking stuff. They're liking girls' photos and funny videos. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like, they don't use social media to grow. Like, that's the thing. It's like, and that's where it gets back to me, where it's like coaches do these things for themselves. They do it for themselves and other coaches because it sounds cool and it gets likes and favorites. That's it. True. It doesn't really apply to like coaches and players watch this game. It's like, dude, like, we are. Like, it's what coaches are. They're getting better. It's just, but it's like a cool thing to say in all caps that gets attention. And it's by far the most annoying part of social media.
Oh, anything in all caps is, well, one, obviously it grabs your attention, but
dude, I have to do it, man. Like, if I say great play, I'll write great in all caps and it gets 100 more likes. Which
is kind of crazy, but people say, like, emails. If you're emailing somebody, if you put all caps in, they're gonna read it no matter what. It's like, I think it's human nature to click on all caps for some reason. I would too. If I see a YouTube like channel on the right side and there's like all lowercase, like, oh, this is cool, best thing you ever will see, all caps. I don't care what the thumbnail is. I'm clicking that thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's just
curiosity, and then that's why people do it, and that's why it works, even though it really shouldn't, because it could be a terrible video.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, little off topic. We'll get back
Chapter
into
12.
Yeah.
Discipline equals freedom. I have it written down right there.
He does.
Discipline equals freedom.
Yeah.
The best saying of all time.
It was funny because like when we would I mean like me and you would come over, and I have like a sweatshirt that says like, discipline equals freedom on it and all these things, and then I hadn't even read the book yet. I really hadn't, and I was over here like, 434 up before the enemy, it was like, this is cool, big tough frog man, like this is cool stuff. And I read the book, I'm like, whoa, like that really applies. I'm like, oh, that's what that means, like I'm like repping it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have, I have discipline, I can, equals freedom. It's like, I don't know what that really means, but hey, you're doing it and you're doing good. Let me just act like I'm doing it. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of was like, then I read it and I was like, oh snap, like this is real, like this is like actually like good. Because like waking up early, I was like, why wake up early? But then he talked about it in there, and I was like, oh, that's why he wakes up early. It's like I was just waking up to wake up early because I thought it was like the cool thing to do. But then when you actually read it and apply it, it's like, oh, that's why you wake up early. So it was really cool for me to read that, because I was being like dumb early in life.
I don't think you're being dumb. I just think you liked it. And it's cool.
Yeah,
I liked it. Yeah,
that's true.
There's nothing wrong with what you did.
Oh no, yeah, I don't think it was a bad thing.
But understanding it is a whole different ballgame.
Exactly, understanding and applying it is like, it was cool to read and be like, oh, that's why I'm doing the things I'm doing. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, discipline equals freedom. The basic premise of this whole chapter is the more discipline you have, the more freedom you're going to have. Time, energy, focus, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Right. So basically, the whole gist of the story is as they were clearing houses, it was taking forever.
Yeah, there was ransacking it. Yeah,
their organization was all over the place. It just took way too long. Mm-hmm. So they went and I think was it Layford Jock? I think Jocko asked him. Jocko asked him, one of the team leaders, to make a plan, come up with a plan that will help us like get a little bit better at this, because the Iraqi government made some changes and had to do it different. Yeah. So they came up with this great plan. They went to take it to the troops, and everybody resisted, because human beings tend to resist change.
I think that's very, very true.
So I just highlighted, so I had to explain why.
Yeah.
Again, go back to why.
Go back to why.
Yep. So basically they explained why the next time they were out, right? The freedom to operate and maneuver had increased substantially through discipline procedures. Discipline equals freedom. Mm-hmm. Right? Page 271. So this is basically where he kind of gets into his discipline spiel.
Yeah.
Right? Mm. First alarm clock.
Yeah, because there's 3 of them.
Yeah. So the first alarm.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just going to read from page 271. I'm just going to read this from the book. The moment the alarm goes off is the first test. It sets the tone for the rest of the day. The test is not a complex one. When the alarm goes off, do you tend to get up out of bed, or do you lie in the comfort and fall back asleep? If you have the discipline to get out of bed, you win. You pass the test. If you are mentally weak for that moment, and you let your weakness keep you in bed, you fail. Though it seems small, that weakness translates to more significant decisions. But if you exercise discipline, that too translates to more substantial elements of your life. Mm-hmm. Did you win today, or did you fail today?
It's funny. This is the only day I failed the last 6 days. This is the last podcast. I was gonna mention that, because I wake up every morning at 5:30 now, and go work out or go on a walk with my dog. And I did really well. And then even on Saturday, yesterday, I had the praxis test for teachers, and I woke up at not 5:30, because the gym isn't open until Saturday at 7. So I didn't go to the gym yesterday. Yesterday I didn't walk the dog either, but I woke up at 6 to study a little bit more and get myself prepared. And then this morning, I woke up at 7:30. I was like, oh, it's 7:30. I was like, I'm tired. I'm back to sleep. Woke up at 9. I lost. I was like, I'm tired. I don't want to get up. And because I think the problem was I wasn't disciplined enough. I was disciplined throughout the week, because I made the plan of, okay, wake up 5:30, go to gym, walk my dog. Saturday, wake up, study for the test. I had no plan this morning. I had nothing planned for this morning. So when I woke up, I said, I got nothing planned this morning. There's no reason for me to wake up. Boom, back to sleep. It was easy for me. So I think moving forward, it's like, hey, make a plan every morning. So when I wake up, I know why I'm getting up. So like this morning, I had no like motivation or purpose to wake up like I did the last 6 days. So I lost. That's why I lost. So that's why I think that's going forward. I got to fix that. Did you win today?
Oh, I failed. Same work last night. My wife worked last night, and she texted me at like 3:45, and I was awake because I was I remember the hard drive failure, I was up a little bit later than normal, and so I was up till like 3:45. She texted me
because you called me at 2 a.m.
Long story.
Anyways,
so Sam texted me, she said, I'm coming home. Then so I was like, well, I'm already awake, I'm just gonna stay up. So we stayed up, and then I felt the baby's kicking, which I was awake till like 5 a.m. So yeah, so I ended up setting my alarm for 12:15 or something like that. And you texted me, and snoozed. I snoozed until 12:45. I was out of it. I was just completely out of it because I just stayed up too late and made some mistakes yesterday.
Exactly. No excuses. We're gonna get better.
Yeah, for sure. And so so I highlighted a leader must lead, but also be ready to follow.
Yeah. No, I wrote that down as well. I thought that was really really key.
So do you want to talk about some of that? Like, did you highlight these principles where a leader must?
I literally wrote all of them down. So
we'll pick your two favorite.
ones. I don't know. I'm not gonna go over like every single one, obviously, or like whatever. I don't know if I had two favorites because there was so many of them to really like look at and dissect. So, give me what's it? What two?
I'll choose my two favorite ones.
278. 278. Okay,
yep.
278. Because it gives you like a legit list, like a lot more like defined than.
Yeah, so there's a list of maybe 10, 12 things.
Yeah.
My two favorite ones were it's a leader must be attentive to details, but not obsessed by them. Right? And then a leader must be calm, but not robotic, logical, but not devoid of emotions. That one for me is huge because on the sideline, that's kind of my demeanor. I'm just relaxed, calm. I kind of look and observe, and I'm more analytical in the sense of I'm looking at the game as the game goes by, and I'm not overreacting to every little thing. Because you overreact to one foul call, you overreact to one turnover, you're going to miss the next play, and you're missing the next play. One of the things that I took away from we're Ohio State football fans, and when Ohio State lost to Purdue, one of their assistant coaches said, "We can't let Purdue beat us twice." I thought that was great because that's basically saying like, yeah, that happened, but we can't let them beat us again, right? You can't let that loss go to the next game. And same thing for like me for turnovers is like, you can't let that turnover beat you twice. You can't commit two turnovers, right?
Yeah.
You commit a turnover, you commit a foul, then you go and screw up on defense or screw up on offense,
frustration
right?
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically you committed two turnovers, not one.
Exactly. So, yeah, football, like you fumble the ball. Like some people, like that's a head. Like it's like, wow, I fumble the ball, like I'm done. Like like it's just just be able to have a short, like short memory, just move on. Like make up for it. It's stuff like just like having the mental focus to keep on continuing. Two are hard. It's hard to pick for me because there's two things that just automatically came off the thing for me personally was confident but not cocky. Because like growing up, especially my first year at football, I ran off Macon. A lot of it, like my teammates were like thought I was cocky, because Dad always told us to carry yourself with confidence and think like you have the skills to be and play with anybody, because otherwise if you don't, then your whole mindset's gone and you can't win that day or win the game, win your competition or whatever. Because that's my second one. My second one is competitive, be a gracious loser. And those two things stood out for me because everyone thought I was so cocky, and then when the coach actually called me into his office and was like, "Hey, Brock, these players are saying, like all these seniors are saying you're just like this super cocky guy. Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "Hey, coach, like I didn't know I was coming across that way. Like, I just think I carry myself with like this confidence, but like it may have been coming off as cocky." So knowing that, I knew it then. I didn't really do anything about it. I think I probably lowered myself so like the seniors wouldn't yell at me anymore or whatever. But now knowing that, and now I'm trying to become a leader myself, it's now I can be like, okay, I have came off in the past as cocky, not confident. So there's being able to find that balance. I got to learn how to be confident, and yet people be like, oh, he's a confident guy, but not cocky. Because there was a fine line that I was crossing that I didn't know. And then because I was young, I didn't know, And then with being competitive but a gracious loser, I think I'm actually okay with that one, but
I was terrible at that one for a long time.
yeah, it's like I think, but I don't know, because being a gracious loser, that's a tough thing to grasp. But I don't think that means being upset when you lose. You know, I don't think it means like, oh, I lost, that's okay. You know, good job. I think it means being a good sport. I mean, correct me if- that's what I think. It's like, hey, as long as you're competitive and you try your hardest and you still lose, be a man and shake the other person's hand and be like, hey, like, good game. That was fun, I guess. But then don't be don't be okay with losing though. Don't get used to it. Don't be comfortable with it. I think just being able to accept that you lost though.
Yeah,
And then fix it. You know.
I think the for the competitive but a gracious loser, the best example is MMA or mixed martial arts.
That it's funny when you said that. The first person was Conor McGregor. That's the first person that pops in my head because as much trash as that man talks, if he loses, I think he actually doesn't okay with losing. Like he'll like props. I mean, do you think so, or maybe not? Am I just?
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah,
I think. Well, also, I mean, the trash talking is a ruse for social media and the environment we live in. I think. I mean, obviously, if social media wasn't as big as it is, I think he wouldn't have become as big as he was.
That's probably true.
But I think you can see whenever he does lose, he tries to come back harder, and he does give other people the credit.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not Khabib now because of the whole craziness.
But
like when you like watching a brutal 15-minute fight with anybody, you can see at the end they hug, they embrace, they shake hands, and no matter what the outcome, they are usually very gracious in losing.
Exactly. I think golf's a good thing as well. It's more of like, it's not like as intense as MMA is. The most two opposite things.
Are you sure?
Yeah. You know, but like I don't think it's the most like two opposite things. You know, golf. Oh, clap. You know, whatever. And the MMA is just like crazy. You know. So, even with golf, it's like someone beats you. Like they're always so like, I don't know. It's like an unspoken rule to be okay. Like you just like always shake your hands, and they're always like, it's like almost like they're uplifting each other. Like, oh, Tiger Woods won. Like everybody was just so happy for him. Even the guy in second place was happy for him. Probably, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like it's just having that like, I think it's more like a mutual respect for the greatness that someone's exuding. You know, for being that. Well, I mean, when you're number one in like your weekend, people are like, man, you beat me. Like that's awesome. But then next weekend comes around, I'm gonna come after you again. You know, so it's like I think finding the balance is key. You know.
Yeah. So for sure. And I like a good leader has nothing to prove but everything to prove.
That was like I read that and I was like, what? I was like, that makes no sense when you like logically it makes no sense. Everything to prove, nothing to prove. But when you read about it, yeah, it's that was a weird thing to read, but it makes sense of it. It makes sense.
Yeah, and then they talked about the story of the company that had the division that his friend ran, and it was not doing well. And Jocko asked, "Is that the best strategy for the company?" The CEO agreed it was not, and he had to make the really tough decision to shut down that branch of the company, right? And then at the end of the day, it did not impact their friendship, and he found another place in the company to incorporate the substantial experience, which allowed him to add value.
Yeah,
I think was great.
That is cool.
But I think the biggest thing that you take away from this book or that chapter of Discipline Equals Freedom is if you are disciplined enough to do the little things, the big thing will take care of itself.
Mm-hmm. And especially in a team setting as well.
And this is the best leadership book I've ever read. Several times, obviously. I think the principles in it are applicable to anybody at any level. And I'm really, really, really glad that you finally read it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I read it now, and I'm like, man, like, what the heck? Why I had this book for 4 years probably sitting on my shelf. And not even on my shelf, because I have other books on my shelf. This one was like off the shelf, like low-key closer to me than any other book was. And I don't know why I never did it. You know?
Yeah.
I know why. I didn't have any discipline to read the book. You know, because I don't like reading books. I was like, I don't want to read a book. I'd rather just play this video game. You know?
Yeah.
Because it's more fun, and I don't have to sit there quietly for an hour and read and do some studying. But now I really love it, and I'm actually going to read it again probably. You know what I'm saying? Now, I think it's once you get, it's the change thing we just talked about a minute ago. It's like nobody likes change. I was so used to, and then, you know, me example, you know, I think a lot of people are so used to doing their constant motion of doing, you know, like they just go on a cycle every day, wake up, boom, do the same thing, you know?
It's comfortable.
Exactly. So it's like being able to be like, hold up, let's change my normality, you know, like change it a little bit. Don't be drastic or anything like that. And I think a saying that I've always really liked that I need to get back into is be comfortable being uncomfortable. So it's like be comfortable being uncomfortable. I thought that, and I've had that for like 3 or 4 years in my head. And I've kind of said it like, hey, this is, I like being uncomfortable and stuff. But it's like, do you really like being uncomfortable? I think once you can understand, like once you can start getting outside of yourself and your comfortability and become uncomfortable, I think that's when you can grow the most.
Yeah.
I really think you grow the most when you start becoming uncomfortable and people challenge you. So I think getting around, like I came to you and was like, hey man, help me out. I'm comfortable where I am, but I don't know how to push myself further. Come help me. And you're like, hey, let's do this podcast, read this book. And I read it and I was like, wow, this is uncomfortable. This is uncomfortable for me. I'm not used to this, but man, it helped me grow so much, so I'm excited about that. So I'm just saying like, try, like get somebody around you that will push you and make you uncomfortable so you can grow and become a leader, and whatever your goal is as an individual. So
discipline equals freedom.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for tuning in this episode, guys.
Yeah.
We'll catch you next week, every Monday at 9 a.m.
See you.